Okay, today's video, the 30th of October 2022. I've gone around and given all the plants that looked like they were kind of not doing that much a dose of fish emulsion. And I soaked some peat for the worms to freshen up their little house. And in this banana hugelkultur bed, I've started to put some plants in pockets like I did the other day. So I've put Russell lupins, a couple of little Russell lupins in there, some Siam chili, which is a mild chili because I don't like hot. Husband likes hot. I've planted hot ones, but there's some mild ones. Cinnamon basil, echinacea. Mum's cherry tomatoes are here, and I've put an amaranth at the back of there. Then there's a bit of a gap for planting later. And on the end of that bed, in the corner, I've put three of the cherry tomatoes from my mum. And when I plant them, I put a bit of Charlie Carp inside the hole at the bottom, and just so they've got a bit of food underneath. But in this one I thought I'd experiment and not put one in that one and see if there's any difference. They're very close together, so they're going to share feed, but I'll just see if that one is any different from not doing that. So the plants that I planted in pockets inside these banana beds near the chook pen seem to be doing okay. They were planted a couple of days ago. They're still very, very happy. Can't see any transplant shock, nothing. Everything seems to be happy. A little concerned about brush cutting yesterday and throwing seeds in there, but I might have to weed it, but yeah, that's where we are here. And another experiment, we had bok choy, I think it was, the other night, and we thought we'd try and grow the base of it. So I put in water a couple of days, and you can see it's already starting to sprout. So I planted them in the garden today. I think they're less likely to rot. And this is the onion, the piece of onion that I planted probably about a week, maybe 10 days ago, and it's starting to grow there. And some carrot tops that tend to go black and slimy even if you change the water. Growing it for the greenery. It's still growing, but I've put it in the garden to see if it makes any difference. It's always failed on me, growing it in water in the house, but I thought I'd try it out here in the garden. And my baby bunching broccoli, which I bought as seedlings, starters from a hardware, are not doing great. And there's something munching on them. I'm not sure if it's caterpillar, and yes, I know I should have them covered. I'll get there. But they're not growing that well either. They're not, they're kind of just sitting there doing nothing. So I gave them a feed today. Again, they've had a couple of feeds, but I'm finding seeds go so much better. If you do your own seeds, they go so much better than buying in the starters that may have come maybe from another state, or who knows, but I'm finding seeds take off heaps better. And up the side, Mum's cherry tomatoes, which I planted on the 3rd of the 9th, so not that long ago, are really taking off. Some are bigger than others. Along here, they're planted in between the asparagus, but that's over a foot high, that one. So it's very happy here. They get a lot of water, I think, here. It's not that it's in an alleyway, so I don't know how they're going to go as far as ripening, but again, an experiment to see if I can grow in all those little pokey places that weren't being used for anything but tall weeds. And up the alley, cannas have bounced up. They're looking happy. Mind you, they'd probably grow anywhere. They'd be happy anywhere. But they're what I planted a few days ago. The potatoes in the boxes, they got absolutely drenched from the floods coming down, all the water coming down from the roof, and that one kind of half emptied that out. You can see the water's all just flown down here. My husband had to dig this out, so it's all filled up here. But they're still happy. I'm going to have to put some straw in there because they're getting pretty tall now. So I need to fill the boxes back up again. And another job, I need to stake the broad beans. Don't think I planted these at a good time. They're getting rust. I think it's rust. See on the leaves, it's probably the worst one. See, they're starting to get rust. They'll probably still give me beans, but yeah. And I'll improve the soil up here for next year, but yeah. And the snow peas aren't they adorable? They're giving me snow peas, but they're so little, so little. So they've all got to feed again today. My little worm farm is pumping. It's full of happy worms, but I'm ready to fill that up with some peat and give them some more food. I've just emptied out the juice from there, and I've added some rainwater with it, put it around my roses and a few other ornamentals. I don't use that on vegetables because it's not just coming from worm castings, it's coming from rotting food. And I mean the worms eat, not the food. It's got to rot before they digest it. So from what I understand, it's best not to put it straight on anything that's edible, so I'm not doing that. I leave the tap open so any moisture comes straight out and we don't get too much moisture building up in the bottom of the worm farm. And it's surprising how much does come out, even though I don't really water it. I keep an eye on the moisture. I don't water it much now. It kind of keeps the moisture with just the food. But yeah, and then I had a little bit too much food in one stage, and I've put and I had these little flies and that, so I've made a little trap which is catching the flies in there. So I've put a trap in there. But that's why I need to, oh, there's a slug. Let's get rid of that. I'm not sharing the garden with you. Okay, so, yeah, so I'm going to fix that up for them. Incidentally, the roses are responding very well to me giving them that juice from the farm too. So, yeah, good for the roses. Now, over in this area, this is another experiment. This is salvia. My mum gave me these plants, and they're much bigger than I thought. Or if you let them go, they get taller and taller and taller, and they almost have like a cane on it, like a sunflower. And they do branch out, and they're bushy and green when they're growing. It doesn't look very sticky and leggy when they're growing. So they're quite lush, and they have the most amazing big long string of flowers, and they attract the honey eaters, and I have the honey eaters in the garden, which is amazing. But they were finished, and I usually cut them off down near the ground, and then they just grow again. But this time I decided to experiment and make these supports, bean supports out of it, and plant beans beside it and see if they're a good companion plant for it, because the leaves have a scent. They have a scent, and it's quite, it's an obvious scent. I was thinking maybe it might confuse the pests that get on beans. So I've planted some beans in there. I've got some wax and a snake bean in there, which grows very, very, very long, the bean itself. So they're both climbers, and I also put some cowpeas in, cowpea seeds that aren't supposed to be climbers, but they still may climb. And then along the back of the fence I've put peas and mustard seeds not from seed packets, for the garden, but from food packets. And if they don't grow well, it doesn't really matter, because they will feed the soil. But if they do, yippee. In this corner I'm growing a Circles Williamette thornless raspberry. So it's got all that space basically to grow in, and it is near a gate. so that's why I chose thornless. And on the other side I've put a thornless blackberry, again so you don't have thorns. But this area I did put amaranth and what was the other thing I put in there? It was a flower, zinnias. I put seedlings in here, and the slugs or the snails just took them all out. There was nothing left. So I have learnt that those two things, and there were other plants, but those two things in particular, I grew up bigger before I plant them out. But in the meantime, I thought, what will I do with that area? So I've put potatoes in there. So that's why all the straw's in there. So I've just laid the potatoes down. There's about 26 of them. Thrown the straw over it. And then yesterday I put some of those peas along the edge and a few up the back to feed the soil. So I'm gradually working through the areas. And then I have some problem spots like this. This gets wet here. That pot plant needs to be dealt with. The water just sits in it. That's why it's tipped over. That's where I've put the thornless blackberry. This is on the other side of the gate. And we've been dumping grass cuttings here, so it's just gone to slime. But that's okay. So all of that is keeping the weeds down while that's just sitting there. And considering it's so wet, I've been thinking, what will I put in there? What will I do with it? So I'm going to try put a bit of gypsum down to break up the clay soil underneath and hopefully have it penetrate better. But that is a great spot for my bananas. They will love it there. So there's still heaps of weeding. Look at all that. Heaps of weeding. It's a spider plant in amongst lots of grass weeds that I just hacked with a brush cutter yesterday just so that seeds wouldn't keep growing. It was probably a bit late, but I don't want to poison, so I'm doing it all manually, weeding, suppressing the weeds with cardboard and mulch and going from there. And that's our pineapple guava that I've got to catch before the birds get, but we've got guava. There it is. They're coming. There's some on there, but the birds are very quick to get them. I don't blame them. And on the other side of the garden, it's pretty much ornamental. I've put some peas in there yesterday. I want to gradually swap this out for edibles. I've had trouble with scale. This is all the gardens were very neglected, so I'm bit by bit going through them. There was a rose that struggled in there. It's looking quite happy since I've hit it with neem oil, actually. It had white scale. You can still see the scale on it. So I just don't know. I think it's killed it, but I can't see anything alive. But I'm thinking about cutting it right back and taking it out and putting it somewhere more sunny because it's quite shaded here. We've got this tree, beautiful canopy, ideal candidate for a grape to grow up, and a big camellia there. Like it's just a tiny little area. So I'll gradually do it. And the pomegranate there has given us pomegranates last year and then they split open because of the irregular watering. So I'm going to watch it this time. I cut it, I opened it up, let some air into the centre of it. It's got curly leaves at the moment. I don't know if it needs a feed or there's an issue. I'm just looking here. They look a bit curly, don't they? They might have... this whole garden might have had issues because the camellia had black sooty mould on it. So that's why I brought out the neem and hit both of those, and that has cleared that up. Like you can hardly see it now. I think I only did it about 10 days ago, and we've had the rain. I did it before we had. Oh look, there's the culprit. Yeah, so I don't know if I need to do that again or not. There's a little bird nest in the centre of it. There's no birds in it, but it needs to be trimmed. So hubby's finishing the chook house and we get chickens tomorrow, I think. So he's trying to get it done today before the rain starts again. But that's a little update. We've started with a big mess about 3 months ago, and just by chipping away at it, it's giving us great pleasure, and it's very rewarding, and I'm glad I started on the garden. So I hope it encourages you to sow a little seed today too. Put a bit too much water in it to squeeze it out. Worms are happy. May not need that, but I'll leave it in there just in case.